You're listening to Seeing with Serena Kumara, a podcast all about the journey of coming home to ourselves, the unlearning, the remembering, and the returning to what's always been true about who we are and what we deserve. My loves, let's have a chat about rest. I love the way we as a collective are committed to prioritizing rest and having more evolved conversations about it. For myself, me and Rest are pretty cool. We still tussle every now and again. She is much more layered than I realized at one point. Like, there's multiple kinds of rest, and there's a lot of reasons why we may think of ourselves as someone who rests but are not rested, right? I can remember when I realized that I struggled with it. I had a conversation with one of my spiritual aunties, and it felt like every time we sat down, she would say, Serena, you need more rest. And so eventually I was like, all I do is rest. Like, what are we talking about here? And she said, just because you're not doing anything doesn't mean you're resting. And that didn't make any sense to me. And so, of course, I did research, and I realized creating a life that honors and prioritizes rest is a bit more nuanced. And so that's what I want to talk about today. If we're being honest, I think a lot of us, myself included, realize that we want more rest and that we need it. But when it comes time to create that opportunity for it, we kind of resist. Maybe it's subconscious. So I realized that I have a problem with stopping before burnout. Like, if I have 3 things on my to-do list and I get them done and I have energy left, the first thing I'm thinking of is getting started on tomorrow's list. The problem with that is that I don't recognize a healthy stopping point sometimes. I go to the point of, now I am exhausted. Now I am burnt out. And now tomorrow, my efforts are going to be a little strained because I couldn't give myself permission to take the gift that is time to rest. Or maybe we do go ahead and take that rest, but we're not really resting, right? We're scrolling or overthinking, kind of running to-do lists, things of that nature. I think a lot of that is because we built identities around being capable and accomplishing and being productive, which we've discussed. And also, we think of rest as just like a refueling to go be productive again. So we think of it as getting just enough to keep us going. And I think that's a part of why we really don't ever get enough. Because as soon as we feel like, oh, I can go again, we do. But the truth is, rest isn't just about refuel. It's also about self-honor. You deserve rest even if you never do another thing. You know, a lot of us were not taught to honor rest either via what we were told about productivity and laziness, but also just what was modeled. Not seeing someone else take their rest seriously. I think a lot of us were taught to manage burnout, which is very different. And I think that we don't know what just a regular need for rest feels like or looks like. So we just go and go and go until we can't no more. Part of it is that leaning into rest actually requires a certain amount of trust. And I want to say faith in the sense that sometimes rest can threaten an illusion of control. So in the sense that if you have a goal and an intention that you set, and you know that when you are actually working in it, right, we're in that like the doer energy, you're the one efforting, then you know it's being worked on. But we know that there's supposed to be a meeting halfway. The idea that like, I'm going to plant the seed and the energy of it is going to bloom. When you don't necessarily trust that the energy is going to bloom, you struggle with resting because you feel like if I'm not working on it, it's not being worked on. And so I think our nervous system starts to read rest as danger, and therefore it feels unsafe on levels that we don't consciously understand. Ultimately, because we have all of this resistance, when we finally realize, okay, I need to prioritize my rest, it's such a big challenge because we have created a whole life that did not consider it when we were building our routines and our priorities and our personal systems. And that often means that we think of rest in one very specific way, like more sleep or laying down or whatever, and it don't hit the spot like we needed to. So let's talk about some of the different kinds of rest. I want to focus on a few that you might not be as familiar with. Mental rest can actually help us think more clearly, make better decisions, and feel more present. So have you ever noticed that any opportunity that you have just shut it down, shut everything down, and maybe just be for a weekend or whatever, when you pop back into work, all of a sudden you extra sharp? Yeah, that's a part of it. The next one is spiritual rest. Rest for your spirit, okay? It can look a lot of different ways. If you connect to a religion, it could be spending time in that sacred text in a way that's not full of pressure or looking for answers, right? Just kind of sitting in it. It can be going out into nature, meditation. Sometimes it's even journaling, even taking time to reflect on your why. It can be a lot of those different things. That is really important because regardless of where you stand spiritually, I think a lot of us interact with it in a way that's about, am I doing the right thing? Or trying to figure out and learn and not just sort of experience it. And so I know for myself, like once I really started developing my practice and seeing myself as having more responsibility in my experience than I was comfortable with, I remember it was like I was on go all the time, trying to figure out if I was doing it right and like checking in with myself and my growth. And it overwhelmed me. And so I kind of got to the point where I jokingly was saying, I think I've grown all I'm going to grow. I have learned all I'm going to learn. If I'm wrong, then that will show up really strongly in front of me. But I'm not looking for another answer right now, right? And I have periods of time and nothing blows up. But that to me is a version of my spiritual rest. Having time to rest your spirit is so important for each of us. You know, it helps us to feel more grounded, even more purposeful. And it can help us to kind of see our life having direction outside of just like to-do lists or correcting ourselves. It also helps us get to know ourselves, like our morals and values and the things that we want. And I think it helps us connect to other people better when we're more centered. And then there's social rest. Now, that's not about just isolating and being off by yourself. It's about centering relationships and social experiences that don't deplete you, that pour into you, where you don't have to be on or you don't feel like you have to perform. It's choosing to be around the people who really get you and appreciate you and love you. And your spirit always knows the difference, right? Sometimes it's canceling the thing because when you ask who all was going to be there, you heard a name that you know was going to take you a lot of energy to not curse out, okay? And so you don't want to spend your energy that way. That's not rest. That's a version of social rest when you say no to that. It's important to say you can have social rest around people. They're the people that build you up or you leave feeling energized rather than exhausted. And then sometimes it's not even the people. I mentioned 1 or 2 episodes ago about the different versions of boundaries, right? I was talking about me telling somebody who hadn't done anything to me, we just didn't have any kind of rapport, no to hanging out. And it's because I didn't have the bandwidth to perform because that's what new relationships require. I felt like I had to show up as my best self. It's why hanging out at your best friend's house feels different than going to happy hour with your coworkers sometimes. Social rest versus social depletion. But when we don't get enough rest, it costs us a lot. We can start feeling disconnected from our bodies, our voice, our core self, right? We can even feel disconnected from our intuition and even our thoughts. Like I know when I'm too tired, it's very hard for me to hear myself think, connect to my intuition, and that is not a good feeling. And so that impacts the way we make decisions because that kind of gets in the way of our clarity. We're not thinking clearly, we're not hearing clearly, all of that. And so the decisions that we make are from our version of survival because a decision has to be made, but not from clarity because we can't hear, think, feel straight. For me personally, it impacts my emotional regulation. Everything starts to feel like too much. And that's sort of a tell like, oh, you need to go rest. And I'll even say like, I need to go rest. I'm going to go disconnect or I'm going to be very mean to you. And I don't want to harm nobody. So we go rest. And another thing, it can make us resent the things that we really wanted. So for instance, let's say you prayed to have a full client book, right? But in your scheduling, you didn't make room for the proper rest you need. And so you're really just booked based on your standards, but it feels overbooked based on your body's standards and your spirit standards. And so every time you get a new inquiry, you start to get that resentment or like that annoyed feeling because you're already so tired. And now you cannot even enjoy what you manifested. Ultimately, we get what we asked for, but we're too depleted to experience it. That's what it does, right? We may get what we asked for, but ultimately we're too depleted to enjoy the beauty of it. That's why we have to prioritize our rest. And rest is more than just getting into bed and turning your phone on Do Not Disturb. It can look a lot of ways. For instance, letting yourself do something just because it feels good. Pleasure actually helps settle our nervous systems, which means that joy is rest. Technically, just doing something because it feels good is creative and emotional rest. We didn't talk about those two, but you should look them up. Letting the day just be unfinished. Again, that could be emotional, mental, physical rest. It's like you telling yourself that your body comes first, not the checklist. And a lot of times that can free up a little space for clarity or creativity on how to handle whatever comes next. And if you're listening and you're realizing, oh, okay, I kind of need to heal my relationship with rest a little bit, here are some sort of simple things that you can do. I would start with being honest about where you are with rest and where you maybe learn to fear or resist it, if that resonates. Maybe the truth is you had no idea that you were resisting it before, but now that you know, you want to integrate it, you don't know where to start. Be honest there. Maybe it's, you're saying out loud that you want more rest, but you realize your life allowed for rest that you didn't take, identifying what that's about. These are two big questions that I've asked myself. What am I afraid will happen if I rest? Really go there. That's where you do that automatic writing where you just write your stream of consciousness. And whose rules am I following? There are several episodes of Seen with Serena Kumara where we talk about where the perspective of productivity came from. If you have not seen them, I suggest you go back and watch. It will help you to identify whose rules you are really following. Look at your relationship with perfectionism. Do you struggle with it? Where'd that come from, right? That's where we lose a lot of our opportunities for rest because we can't just stop until something is perfect. So we've taken 4 hours to do something that we could do in 2 because it has to be just perfect. And we're going to choose perfection over rest every time. Look at energy leaks. Where are you people pleasing? Where are you possibly over preparing? Where are you saying yes before thinking? And ultimately, calling your community and professional help. Maybe it's a thing where therapy is needed. Maybe there's something where I'm resting, but my mental noise is too loud and we need to speak to somebody about it, somebody that can help us, right? Professionals, herbalists, mental health professionals, things of that nature. Maybe you need energy work. Maybe you need the sound bowl. There are lots of different avenues to take to get the support that you might need. Now, I will say this. Intentional rest is absolutely a radical thing because of all the conditioning that we've discussed so many times before, because it pushes against grind culture and perfectionism and ultimately capitalism, child. Okay, I said it. It pushes against the idea that you are just here to produce, that your life is just to be consumed. It says, I am not a machine and I matter just because. Because of that, for some of us, prioritizing it for the first time may not feel so good. It might be uncomfortable, emotional, or unfamiliar, especially if you've been in survival mode for a long time. I know this from experience. There was a period where I was on go, 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 and I had the opportunity to rest. And I remember feeling really uncomfortable and like weepy and kind of like I was going to jump out of my skin. It just took time and intention to move out of that space. But it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong if that stillness brings up thoughts and memories that you wanted to push down. It really means that you're doing a new thing and unlearning a new thing, and it's going to take time for your mind, body, and spirit to all become comfortable with it. So my suggestions are to maybe start small. Take 5 minutes for an intentional pause. Maybe stillness is not the thing for you, so maybe you rest through movement, like the walking or the stretching, the breath work we've talked about. If the silence is too loud, then that's when you get sound machines. You go on YouTube and you search ambient music or sound bowls or things of that nature. And that can be helpful. And if you're feeling something, speak them out loud or write them down to help them to move out of your body so you can get more comfortable in that restful state. Now, I don't think that we should need anyone's permission to do anything. However, I do think that hearing somebody else say it out loud sometimes helps us to do hard things. So here is your permission to rest. You don't have to complete anything first. You don't have to hit a milestone, check every box, or prove that you've earned it. You don't have to be falling apart before you decide to pause. You are worthy of rest simply because you exist. Because you are here to experience your life, not just manage it. You are here to create, to enjoy, to be fully alive in your own body. You're sacred. And your body already knows that. It's just waiting for you to catch up. You are allowed to rest. Not later, not when you've earned it, now. All right, love bugs, let's get into this week's affirmation. I am only accepting the best life has to offer. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next week. Love you. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, and drop a comment. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone you love. You can find me on Instagram at Seen with Serena and at serenakumara.com. Until next time, be wildly, radically, and unapologetically good to yourself. Love you.